On the evening of December 22nd, 1989, the Harris family of Dryden, New York, received the final visitor of their lives. One after the other, Tony Harris, his wife Dolores, and their two younger children were tied up, shot in the head, doused with gasoline, and then set alight. Their charred corpses were discovered the following morning, after a neighbor complained to the fire department about a smoke alarm going off on their property. Disturbingly, the police stated that the Harris' home showed no signs of forced entry, leading them to believe that their killer had either snuck in through an open door or maybe a window, but was highly unlikely, given the frigid outdoor temperatures, or that the killer was someone they knew and trusted. In light of how difficult it was to discern any kind of motive, the investigation into the murders quickly stalled, and local law enforcement reached out to the FBI for more extensive assistance. FBI agents discovered that a brown van had been taken from the Harris' family garage, one that was later discovered in a parking lot of a nearby mall. Police also declared that they wished to speak with a cyclist seen riding through the area shortly before nightfall on December 22nd. Frustratingly, not a single witness came forward, and this further slowed an already difficult investigation. Back at the Harris' home, Christmas wreaths and red ribbons had been joined by yellow crime scene tape. The family had moved there just 3 years prior, after Tony was offered a job at Deanco, a Syracuse-based electronic equipment distributor. His wife Dolores, or Dodie as she was known, was a popular figure in the neighborhood, frequently organizing bake sales and cookie exchanges while running a small crafts and gift shop out of the family home. The murders stunned the local community, with Tompkins County Sheriff Robert Howard stating that there hadn't been a murder in the area in a long time. Naturally, the Harris' neighbors were horrified by such a brutal slaying, who stated that their suburb of Ellis Hollow was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked. For a horrific crime to happen there, something had to have gone very wrong. At the family's collective funeral, loved ones and neighbors described them as active and well-liked members of the community. "You can't think of anyone that would have a grudge against them," said Ann Parzale, a friend of Mrs. Harris. "People can't understand how it could happen. This is a very wholesome, family-oriented community. Those things aren't supposed to happen here, inside this community," added Edgar Clemens, who was a retired school teacher and had lived on Ellis Hollow Road for 26 years. "I don't think anybody around here slept Saturday night. I've opened the door to people whose cars have broken down. I don't think I'll do that anymore." Police quickly uncovered a suspect, however, an ex-con known as Michael Kinge, and set about tracking him down. Yet when they finally cornered him at his apartment complex, Kinge produced a shotgun, placed it under his chin, and threatened to kill himself. The cops held their fire, promising to bring in a trained negotiator in hopes of de-escalating the situation. But before that negotiator could arrive, Kinge aimed the shotgun at police officers and fired. Thankfully, the shot sent lead fragments spraying harmlessly above their heads, and law enforcement's return fire was considerably more accurate. But before he fell, Kinge turned the shotgun on himself, racked a shell into the chamber, and fired. The Tompkins County Medical Examiner found that the shots Kinge fired in his attempt at suicide had merely grazed the left side of his face, and it was the police's small caliber handgun ammunition that actually put him down. However, given the circumstances of Kinge firing a shot at them, his death was ruled a justifiable homicide. Obviously, Kinge was never put on trial for the murders, but his suicide by cops situation was seen by many as a tantamount to his admission of guilt. This was later confirmed when a sawed-off rifle found in the suspect's apartment was positively identified as the weapon used to kill the Harris family. Kinge's mother was wrongly convicted of being involved in the murders and ended up being a major police scandal. But aside from this horrifying miscarriage of justice, the really disturbing thing is that the motive behind the killings was never determined. No one knows why a small-time crook like Michael Kinge just suddenly snapped and chose the most wonderful time of the year for one of the most heinous crimes in history. I've known for a while that I wanted to submit this story, but I felt odd about it since I'm still friends with some of the guy's family and would feel like a total shitbag if it was ever seen. However, I've been home with the kids reading today, and got pissed that I read all of your stories and was fresh out of creepy material. So to be part of the solution, I guess. Here we go. I'm a member of the slam poetry scene. Basically, it's an excuse to get people to listen to a performance poetry by adding a competitive element to things. After running through the small scene in my city and wanting to branch out and push my career further, I started visiting places within driving distance that I could spit. This led me to Charlotte, North Carolina. I started on their local team venue, where you compete to be a part of a squad that goes to a national competition every year. I was doing well and was accepted into the local crew pretty readily. This led to longer stays and features at some of the other venues in the city. I started going to one that was particularly popular. It was good for selling CDs, and this is where I met this guy. He worked as a barback, occasionally got on stage and shared. Frankly, it was always shitty poems. He was the brother of the host and everyone knew and liked him. He began flirting with me more and more. Although in my loose days, searching for acceptance and love everywhere, something always kept me leery. I'd gladly accept the drinks he sent over, smoke his weed with the group in the stockroom between sets, and hang out at parties and other events. But I always had this tickle in my gut, warning me to not get close. But over a year or two, we continued to become friends. After a while, he started calling and texting me more often, poking me on Facebook daily, sending messages about wanting to be more than friends, and he wanted to find a snow bunny and settle down. Again, I never entertained it. There's just something gnawing at me. The crazy in his eyes was too hard to miss. Eventually, I moved to Denver to take a position teaching poetry and work at a friend's law firm. The second Christmas that I was there, I got a call. One of my friends from Charlotte relayed the following message. He'd found his white girl and gotten married. They seemed happy at first, but slowly began fighting more and more. It spilled over into the venue, and often they had to be separated by friends from physically attacking one another in public. One friend, later thinking back, remembers the last time that she saw them together. Him pushing his wife, following by her throwing a drink in his face, and scratching his neck deep enough to draw blood. She said after the couple had been dragged away from each other, she sat with him and smoked a cigarette. She says she laughed and said, "You guys are gonna kill each other." Around Christmas of last year, his wife stopped coming to the bi-weekly events they both attended regularly. He explained it away that they were on a break. Time goes by. No one really questions that they hadn't seen or heard from her in quite a while, thinking she was breaking from the whole scene in order to put distance between herself and her husband. Her parents, however, hadn't heard from their daughter since Thanksgiving dinner. They would call him, and he would say everything was fine and blow them off. This continues until a week after Christmas, knowing their daughter would never miss a holiday, at least without a call. They call the police and send them over to the couple's home for a well body check. The cops arrive. They knock on the door and are let in. They ask him where she is. He replies that she's still in the bedroom. He shows them to the room where she lay there, dead for weeks, rotting in their bed. Oh, and he killed her little dog too. During this time, he'd been attending events, hosting hip-hop nights, and even publishing a blog on making a marriage work on one of the local organization sites, never once letting on that every night he was going home and sleeping with his murdered wife. The sickest part of all of this, he is a child from another relationship, a daughter whom he gets to celebrate with every other holiday. That Christmas, they opened gifts, had dinner, cuddled up on the couch, and watched movies, less than 100 feet from her decaying stepmother. I don't know what would have happened if I'd ever taken him up on the offer to date. But I do know me and my gut are going to stay on speaking terms, and I will always listen to it. This happened in December of 2011 when I was on a college semester break. I grew up in rural Texas with about 1,000 people in my hometown. Shortly after my parents divorced, I moved to a larger city for college and made it a tradition every year to visit my family for the holidays in the boonies of Texas. After the divorce, my mom had recently moved to a nearby town, only 100 people, where her house was located. It was on the very outskirts of town, surrounded by miles and miles of cornfields in almost every direction. There was a side paved road that was about 100 feet off of her house that basically was a dead end until you reached a certain point. Then directly across the other side of the road was in fact miles of fields of corn. The only neighbor that she had was half a mile north of her house, who was a truck driver and was basically never home much of the year. I'm telling you all of this so you know how secluded my mother's house really truly was. The closest town from here was 15 to 20 miles away. This winter break was different because my mother and brother were going to travel to Boston to visit my grandparents. My mom needed someone to sit the dog. After a few days of having the house to myself in the middle of nowhere, I'm getting kind of bored. So I decide to put the harness on my dog and take a walk out into the area in no particular direction. We end up following that dead-end road and then turn back as it starts to get darker. The wind's picking up because a cold front was coming through. At this time, I'm slightly more frustrated with myself because I could start to smell the rain. My dog can be particularly stubborn. He likes to walk me instead of the other way around. Anyway, as we start walking back, it's getting colder and colder. Now it's drizzling, and I'm walking a bit faster. We're damn near almost to a jog, heading back to the house, when all of a sudden, my dog stops abruptly. Initially, I just think it's him being stubborn, but he starts leading me in the direction of the cornfield. I'm thinking this is one of those cases where he just locks onto a scent and just cannot let it go until he directly goes up to it, or I have to pick him back up and lead him back on track. I don't allow him to get very far, and we're directly in front of the fields. And then all of a sudden, he starts barking, similar to how he barks when he sees another person, and he's not friendly to other people. I finally get tired of all this. I pick him up and we run back home, both now damp and cold. Once back inside, I dry up and take a bath. It's now evening time. I make something to eat, and my dog and I start winding down for the night. We watch a bit of TV in the living room, and by 10 p.m., we call it for the night. It's still very much windy outside this time though, and that storm never really died down. We go into the bedroom. My dog burrows underneath the blankets, and I pass out shortly after. Several hours later, I wake up to my dog growling on my bed in the direction of the window. I hear rustling outside, and I think it's likely just another animal, but I'm still kind of drowsy, so I get out of bed and pick up my dog to corral him to the living room, where I turn on the TV to drown out those rustling noises. My dog burrows underneath the blankets again, and I'm just about to fall asleep when I hear a thud outside. I'm like, what the hell was that? And of course, my dog is now wide awake again, barking and growling underneath the blankets. I'm wide awake now. I'm getting annoyed with my dog. I turn up the TV, trying to drown out all those noises outside once again. 25 minutes later, at 1:30 a.m., I hear a knock on the back door. Now all hell breaks loose with my dog. He's literally about to jump off the couch and dash to the door. I caught him last minute, and just to hold him in place while we're both freaking out. I'm hoping to God that I didn't hear that, hoping that it was just my imagination. My dog started to calm down. I'm thinking maybe I did imagine that. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe there's a period of time where I just don't remember anything. Shortly thereafter, I don't hear any more rustling leaves coming from outside. My dog goes back to being silent and burrows underneath the blankets once more. Cue the doze off to slumberland, only to wake up 30 minutes later to another knock, but now it's on the front door. I literally feel my heart pumping so damn fast. I grab the landline and dial 911. My dog is now at the front door barking ferociously. I reach the adjacent town's 911 emergency service and frantically state what's all happening and why my dog is freaking out. The police from the adjacent town was on their way, but it was going to take a while to get to my house. I stay on the phone with the dispatcher and things start to calm down again. And I tell them that I'm pretty sure I can handle it from here at least until the police arrive. I hang up and very carefully look out the side window, only to see a man standing directly in front of the door. No movement from him at all, just a blank stare at the door. I grab the mace and my dog and state very loudly to him, the police are on their way. I get no response back. I'm thinking this guy has to be on drugs at this point. I end up going to the front door. I yank it open, and the doors in this house have a secondary door with a windowed screen. It's locked and would take some effort to get inside because the screen is triple pane. I look into his face and ask what the hell he wants. told him the police were about to be here. He just stares blankly, paused for what must have been the longest 20 seconds of my life, opens up his mouth and asks if I want to play a game with him. After that, I immediately shut the door and yelled back ferociously, absolutely not. I waited in the bedroom, watched him on my front porch for about 5 minutes, just staring blankly at the door, no movement whatsoever. He finally turns around and just walks away. 20 minutes later, the cops show up. I'm describing everything frantically to them. I literally peed my pants earlier. That's how terrifying everything was. The cops then basically state that there's a guy in my town that has schizophrenia and is going through late stages of Alzheimer's, and sometimes he wanders around people's house. Needless to say, they found him and took him back to his caretakers. They asked if I had anywhere else to go, and I basically packed everything up and bolted to my father's house with my dog, and then stayed there for the remainder of the break. I always tell people that bartending isn't as glamorous as they think. Sure, you've got your free drinks and your regulars who tip big if you keep their glasses full, but it's a grind. Long hours of drunk people spilling their life stories all over you. Constant hum of music and chatter that almost drills into your skull. When I was younger, it was a pretty decent gig. It paid the bills and kept my fridge stocked. Gave me enough extra to feel like I wasn't just scraping by. But to me, it was never really more than that. It was just a job. The worst part though, at least in my opinion, was the holidays. We didn't get to skip out on Christmas, New Year's, or even the other days that most people spent with their families. The bar still opened, and somebody had to be there to sling drinks for those who didn't have anywhere else to go, or didn't want to. We tried to spread the misery around, divvying up the shifts so nobody got stuck with all those crappy days, but it was still a roll of the dice. And that year, you guessed it, my number came up for Christmas. "Just think about the tips," my boss said with a grin, handing me the schedule. I gave a fake smile back, but my jaw was clenched so hard, I thought my teeth might crack. The truth was, the tips didn't make up for it. Christmas at the bar was this weird mix of festive and depressing. We decorated the place with tinsel and those cheap string lights that blinked like they were on their last leg. The TVs playing old Christmas movies with the volume low, while a mix of holiday classics and rock ballads blared out from the jukebox. We even had a few peppermint-themed drink specials that nobody ever wanted. The crowd that came in was always pretty predictable, mostly regulars, the same old guys who occupied the same stools every week, nursing their beers and swapping stories about when life was better. But Christmas would always bring a few wild cards. The lonely ones, looking for somewhere to go or somebody to talk to. They'd wander in with red noses and wide eyes, clinging to their coats like they've been outside just long enough to lose all their warmth. I tried to not think about what it all meant, being here instead of, well, anywhere else. Just keep my head down, pour a few drinks, and watch the clock crawl towards closing time. When I noticed the guy at the far end of the bar, he was half hidden in the shadows, and I don't remember seeing him come in, but there he was, staring at me like he was waiting for me to do something. "Doing okay over there?" I called out, forcing a smile. He didn't answer me, just tilted his head slightly. The night dragged on, the usual lull that followed the initial holiday rush. People were drinking slowly now, most of them looking at their watches, ready to leave to go wherever the night was going to take them. But that man didn't move. He continuously watched me from the end of the bar, and it was starting to get under my skin. His eyes almost seemed to never leave me, dark and unreadable. I kept busy, wiping the counter down, pouring drinks, and trying my best not to glance over at him. But it was like he was pulling my attention and forcing it back to him. I tried to brush it off, but the longer I worked, the more uncomfortable I started to feel. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "Can I get you anything else?" I asked, setting the glass down that I'd been cleaning. His voice was low and there was an edge to it. "You got any of that special drink you were talking about earlier, the peppermint one?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "We got a few, they're on the specials menu." He gave a single nod and still didn't break eye contact. I turned away to fix it. The feeling of his gaze stayed with me though, gnawing at the back of my neck. I handed him the drink, but he didn't move to take it. Instead, he just sat there, staring. "You're not gonna tell me what's really going on, are you?" he said. I paused, my hand still hovering near his glass. I blinked and was completely unsure of how to respond to him. "Excuse me?" "I know something about you," he said, leaning forward just slightly. "You don't belong here. Not tonight." I forced out a laugh. It's just a job. I'm here like everybody else." He didn't laugh with me. His head tilted again. The rest of the night seemed to pass in a blur. The bar cleared out and just a few of the regulars were left, nursing their drinks. Occasionally I would steal glances at the man, but he never took his eyes off me. Every time I turned, I felt his gaze follow. He had not moved from that spot, but I had this distinct feeling that he really wasn't sitting anymore. He was waiting. By the time I finished cleaning up, the place was almost empty, save for a few people who were still finishing their drinks. I locked up and hit the lights and grabbed my coat. That cold hit me immediately as I stepped outside. My car was parked near the back of the lot, half buried underneath fresh snow. I had planned to call for a tow truck, but I thought better of it. It's Christmas Eve. I didn't want to bother anybody on a night like this, so I just figured I'd walk home. My walk really isn't that long. It's only about 1.5 miles, but in the freezing cold with the snow biting at my skin, it would feel like an eternity. The streetlights flickered in the distance. The world felt quiet. As I reached that first intersection, I checked both ways. No cars, no movement. The street was still, just like the rest of the city. I took a quick breath and stepped onto the crosswalk, and that's when I heard footsteps. At first, they seemed distant, almost like I wasn't sure what I was hearing, especially with the wind howling and the snow crunching beneath me. When I turned, I saw him. There he was again, the man from the bar. I froze. He was walking in my exact footsteps, keeping pace. His head was down and his breath was rising up in clouds. I quickened my pace, the heels of my boots clicking against the pavement faster now, but when I looked back, he had closed the distance. I glanced around. No cars, no businesses. The street was empty. It was just me and him. "Hey," I shouted, my voice shaky. "The hell do you want from me?" He didn't answer me. My pulse pounded in my ears as I walked faster. He was still behind me, matching every step. I was almost home now though, just a few more blocks. But then I heard him shout, "You don't belong here," he yelled, his voice harsh and twisted. "You never did." I was close enough now that I could see my house at the end of the block. His footsteps were still behind me, closing in, and I could swear that I heard his breath now, heavy and shallow. Before I could make a move, I felt his hand on my shoulder. My scream was in my throat, but it caught in my chest as I was shoved hard against the cold brick of a building. His breath was hot against my ear, his body pressing in close around me. "Please," I gasped, struggling to free myself. "Get off me, what do you want?" I got no response, only his grip tightened, and for a moment I thought this was it. I would be left out here in the dark, no one to help and no one to stop him. And that's when I heard another shout. I looked up, trying to focus through my panic. Across the street, I saw 3 men walking toward me, their eyes wide with alarm. They were carrying something, cases, musical equipment maybe. They set them down in the snow and quickly rushed toward us. "Get off her!" one of the men yelled, his voice deep and pretty commanding. The man who'd been holding me stepped back and muttered something under his breath. He turned and quickly ran down an alley before the trio of men could even reach me. Those men stayed with me as I shakily called the police. They were kind, offered reassurance while they kept their eyes on the alley. It felt like forever before the police finally showed up, and when they did, they couldn't really find any trace of the man. I still didn't feel safe, even with them there. Those men insisted on escorting me home, making sure that I got inside without any more incident. When I finally closed that door behind me, I breathed a sigh of relief, but even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer alone. The man had seen something in me, and something that I couldn't quite explain. But thankfully, I never saw him again.